Islam, brothers and sisters. Islam, Islam, Islam. Islam family, peace and love to you all. Peace and love to you all. My name is Malik Wali Obey. And this is part 2, Law of the Land part 2, the second portion of part 2. Part 2B, I guess you could say. And let's see here. We're going to pick back up right where we was at before with understanding how the Moors granted our European brothers and sisters pardon. And that's what we did. And to operate here in America as a republican form of not government, but as a commerce and trading corporation that functions with a platform that is very similar to our republican governmental platform. Okay, the Moors are the government. The Europeans do not have a government; they have a corporation. All right, and the Europeans are in the position to say that they are government, when in fact they really are not the government. They don't have a government. A bill doesn't become a law. It's more or less policy. All right. Even going back to 1789, it is not a government. It is a corporation. And if they were going to function as a corporation on this land, the UK, the land of America, the ancient ones, all right, there must be a organized form of how we go about governing ourselves. All right, it must be organized, and it must be organized, and it must go in alignment that we have put in place here. Okay, that's how it must be. All right, it must go along with these principles of equality, justice, truth for everybody. All right, everybody's gonna be treated equal. Nobody's gonna be mistreated just based on the color. Not color. Nobody's gonna be mistreated based on where they come from, based on their gender, based on what they do, based on their ethnicity, based on what region of the planet that they're from. All right, everyone's gonna be treated equal because that's nature's law, and that comes from us. That didn't come from anybody else. Okay, and our European brothers and sisters are not accustomed to that. They're accustomed for a king or someone else to be telling them what to do, where to go, how to conduct themselves. Right? They're not accustomed to being in a position where they can do whatever they want. They can create whatever policies they want for themselves. And that's the position that we put our European brothers and sisters in. Now, mind you, before I get into this other stuff, I want to be very clear that the Moors in America did not get the Europeans out of any previous contract. Thus, the Moors in America made a contract with our European brothers and sisters without the permission of the church, right? So, without the permission of the Pope, right? Without the permission of King George and King James and all of them. Because we don't need their permission to make a contract with us, okay? Our agreement is based on us, them and us, okay? It has absolutely nothing to do with clear the mind. It has absolutely nothing to do with, how can I say? It has absolutely nothing to do with religion. Okay, religion has no say-so on what we're doing. Okay, It has nothing to do with religion. It has everything to do with understanding the fact that it's principles, equality, truth, justice for everybody. Okay? And the contract that our Europeans had with King George, they were still in. And they were trying to declare independence from them. The contracts that their European brothers and sisters they were in with Tunis, Algiers, Tripoli, and Morocco, the kingdom on the other side, they were still in those contracts. Okay? Thus, it's very important to understand that. If we did not get them out of those contracts, we made an additional contract with them or with us here. That's what the treaties are. Okay? Where they could do commerce and trade with us. And after we made that contract with us, after we made that contract with our European brothers and sisters, the European brothers and sisters was like, well, look, if y'all going to support us and y'all going to give us all this gold and silver and land, not land, we can't give you land, but you're going to allow us to stay here and allow us to use your gold and your silver and your copper and your cotton and your corn and your potatoes and your tea and your lumber, right, and your furs, and teach us how to govern ourselves here and support us. And we don't need to be in that contract with England. We don't need them to support us. And that's all they were saying. They was like, I declare my independence away from you, England. I don't need your support anymore. So whether you give it or not, I'm not interested. Alright, I'm gonna go here and be with these Moors here, falsely called Indians. I'm going to go here and set up shop here. And then they're going to support us from this day forward. Alright? That's what happened. Alright? And of course, England didn't like that. And then you had the fighting and all other stuff. But it's very important to understand that truth. Okay? And we are the ones who really put this thing in place. Alright? Alright. Now, continuing on, the Constitution is a contract. A contract is a legal agreement between two or more persons to do or not do something. A covenant. Article 4 of Section 4 of the Constitution states that the United States shall guarantee in every state in the Union a Republican form of government. What is a Republican form of government? A Republican form of government is a state where the supreme governing power is held by the citizens, i.e. the people. And the people having the right to vote and is exercised by representatives elected and responsible to such citizens. Alright? Thus the citizens elect who they want to represent them to carry on the major affairs between states, right? But the representatives represent the people. And whenever the representatives don't do a good job, the people have the right to remove them, i.e. impeach them. That's what impeachment is. It's a removal. And then they'll put somebody else in that position who can do that job. Okay? The Constitution does not grant rights to people. The Constitution preserves and secures and protects pre-existing rights of people. Our pre-existing rights are lined out in Article 6 of the Constitution. Alright? Though we the people of the Constitution are the Moors, not the Europeans. Our European brothers and sisters adopted the Constitution from the Moors. The Constitution was a document that was copied from the Moorish Constitution called the Guyana Shigawa, the Great Law of the Great Peace. The 5 tribes of New York are the Cayuga, Seneca, Mohawk, Onondaga, Oneida, commonly referred to as today as the Iroquois Confederacy. Okay? Thus, the Constitution came from the Iroquois Confederacy. The Constitution did not come from our European brothers and sisters and what you call the Mayflower Compact, or it did not come from the Magna Carta. Okay, the Constitution came from us. We had a Republican form of government where everybody got to say so. Our European brothers and sisters did not have that type of government. They came from a feudal system in England where the king owned everything and the people were more or less serfs on the land. And they worked the land, and in exchange for serfdom they are compensated. They are allowed to stay on the land in exchange for their energies. They're working. But they did not own any land. You see what I'm saying? That's what our European brothers and sisters were coming from. Alright, we did not operate like that. Alright, it's very important to understand that. Now with law, there are 3 issues of law. Law has 3 components. Okay? Law, the first component is status. The next is jurisdiction. The third is adjudication. And since law comes from nations, law can only be used by people who are in a sovereign capacity. Okay? Sovereignty can only be acquired by people who are part of a nation or have a nationality. That's what you call birthrights or nobility. Alright? Therefore, if one is not a part of a nation, one cannot be sovereign. They cannot enforce law or have any authority. Alright? The only nations on North and South America are the Moorish nation. There is no Mexican nation. There's the Moorish nation. And our Mexican brothers and sisters are the mixed breed between the European Spaniards when they came here and mixed in with the Moors here, and mixed in with the Asians who were here, and thus gave a certain stock of Mexicans. Call themselves Mexicans, but they're not really Mexicans. They're Europeans who traveled to Mexico, mixed in with some of the native blood, native people in Mexico, and instead of calling themselves Spaniards, refer to themselves as Mexicans because they're attaching themselves to the legacy that was already here and not attaching themselves to the legacy from in Spain. Okay? And this is why our European brothers and sisters, whether they are English, whether they are French, whether they are Spanish, whether they are Dutch, whether they are Irish, Scottish, German, Swedish, Italian, Russian, or Danish, okay, they cannot have nationality cards in America. They don't have nationality cards. What they have is they can have a green card, meaning they know that they're here to work for certain purposes. Or they can have a passport, or they can have a working visa, where they're here to work. Alright? But they cannot have a nationality a nationality card, because they are not the nation in America. They are from other portions of the world, primarily Europe, who are just been living in America for about 200 years. And the majority of European brothers and sisters cannot trace themselves back to the 1700s or the 1600s, because many of those brothers and sisters didn't make it. The Europeans from the 1600s didn't make it to the 1700s. And many Europeans from the 1700s didn't make it through the 1800s. Okay? And that's why you had that huge flux. They had to repopulate in the 1800s with the whole Ellis Island and all of that other stuff. Okay? And then the majority of the people now today can trace themselves here back from 1850 and on up. Alright? Yeah. Now, sovereignty was with the nation. So when we talk about sovereignty, well, let's talk about status. Status is a person's legal condition, whether personal or property. The sum total of a person's legal rights, duties, liabilities, and legal actions. In America, you can only be a citizen. Now, there are two types. There are four types, okay, of citizen. Okay? In America, you can only be a citizen. You can be a national citizen. You have the highest ranking citizen. That means you're natural, you're aboriginal, you're indigenous to the land. You didn't come here, you wasn't brought here, you've always been here. Alright, you have birthrights, you inherit the land and the resources. That's national. Those have national identification cards. Then you have a naturalized citizen who came here through citizenship, or who came here to become citizens through naturalization. So they got naturalized with the Ellis Island thing. And naturalization is when people are granted or clothed with rights and privileges. Alright? Like resident aliens under treaty. Okay? Without this naturalization, there are only resident aliens living here with a green card or with a working visa. Okay? And then the third type of citizen is a subject citizen. Subject citizens and corporations, like the United States of America, state of Ohio, people who call themselves or classify themselves as white or black or Negro or colored or Spaniard. Okay, they're subject to, because they're not naturalized, they're not national, but they're subject to the naturalized citizens. They're subject to the national citizens. Okay? You're here to work and do certain duties, commerce, and trade. And then the fourth type of citizen is alien. And aliens are foreigners or people who were born in another nation or another country or another location, who remain as foreigners in this when they travel to their new country, and who remain as foreigners with allegiance to the first country where they were born in. They have allegiance to the country that they were born in, and they just reside in America. And they're granted with clothes and privileges through their green card or through their working visa. Okay? Or their passport. So you gotta understand that. You know what I'm saying? So when people come here with passports and green cards and working visas, they're aliens who was given, who still have an allegiance to the original country, whether it be England, Spain, China, Japan, who are only residing in America for maybe 7 years or 8 years to do commerce and trade, to get a job, to work a business, to start a business. And after those 7 years are up, it expires and they have to go back unless they renew it again. Okay? So those are the types of citizens. Okay? Now, after status, we have jurisdiction. Those type of citizens will declare one's status. Okay, where do you stand? Are you a national? Are you national? Are you a naturalized? Right, that's your status. Judication is a jurisdiction is what you call personal jurisdiction. Has 4 types. You have the presence, state jurisdiction, being present in the state, where you reside in the state. Then you have domicile, place of business, right? And then you have consent, either by expressed or implied. Then we acquiescence or soakage. Expressed is voluntarily appearing in the court. Implied is driving on the roads of the state. Alright? So these are all types of jurisdiction. Okay? In all these cases, the judge always has to ask permission to begin adjudicating by asking, do you understand the law that applies to you, that applies to this matter? If one says yes, then that gives the court jurisdiction. If one says no, the court cannot proceed until they get jurisdiction. And then the 4th type of jurisdiction is minimum contacts. Thus, the court believes that you have had enough personal interaction with the state to justify personal jurisdiction. Okay? And then there's adjudication. Adjudication is the process of deciding a case. Okay? Where they will be like, alright, innocent and guilty. Where they have the ability to proceed forward and to give a sentence. But before you get there, you gotta have jurisdiction. Okay? Now, jurisdiction is interesting because the only people who have jurisdiction here are the Moors. Europeans do not have jurisdiction on the land. They have permission to travel through the land, the treaties, and they have permission to travel to the land, the Treaty of Peace and Friendship. So they can travel to the land and they can travel through the land. And because of the treaties, they can, as they're traveling through, they can establish schools, or they can establish churches, or they can establish schools, churches, and what's the third one? They can, make a city or something like that, a business. All right, so they can establish these businesses from time to time. That's what they can do. Okay, but they don't really have any jurisdiction beyond that. All of their jurisdiction comes from contract. Thus, in order for our European brothers and sisters to be able to do business with anybody, they must have a contract. Either it be a state ID or a driver's license, primarily a driver's license, or some type of birth certificate or social security card, something that gives them permission. Okay? There must be some sort of contract, some sort of agreement, a bank account. There must be some type of agreement where they can have some type of jurisdiction, where they can do business with the individual. But outside of that, they actually cannot do business and interact with the private citizens because they don't have any jurisdiction to do that. They only have jurisdiction on the major international affairs as far as trading of commerce. Commerce and trade on a major scale. They can't really intrude on their private citizens' individual actions. They have no authority to do that. Okay? Now, moving on from there, now we move into hierarchy of law. I talked about divine law already, and there's international law, commerce law, common law, color of law. Okay? Then we got de jure and de facto. Okay? Okay? International law, the law that applies to the affairs of nations. That's international law. Okay? So let's go with the law. The hierarchy of law. There's divine law, law from nature, based on moral principles. Alright, love, truth, peace, free will, justice, equality. Then there's international law. That's the law of nature applied to the affairs of nations. And number 3 is commerce law. Now, commerce law is the exchange of goods and services on a large scale, including transportation between cities, states, and nations. Number 4, we have common sense law. That is the law written and contained within a case book. So as you look it up on court, and you go to case for a ticket, or you look up the court, or any case that has ever happened is written in case law. That's common law. Okay. Then we have color of law. Color of law is interesting. Color of law is an appearance or semblance without substance or legal right. When a person is in their proper person, only natural law and law of nations applies to that person. When that same person is not in their proper person, and they begin to govern and accept and use the labels and classify themselves with the labels of either black, white, Negro, colored, African, African American, Indian, Chinese, Japanese, Korean. You understand what I'm saying? And color of law applies because they know there's only one person on this planet. It is plain. Okay, it is important to understand these labels and understand who we are, who we really are, so we can begin to navigate our journey properly. Okay? Color of law is the appearance of law. It looks like law. And it seems like it's law, but it's not really law. It has no substance behind it. Okay? And that's what you call these statutes, codes, and ordinances are. They're color of law. Based on what someone looks like, sounds like, you know what I'm saying? Based on what they have a contract. It's not really law, it's policy. Okay? And from there, that will segue right into de jure de facto government. And in America, there are two forms of government that are in place. The de jure government, that's a republic. Alright? And republic, as I once said, is a functioning governmental body that is legally established and existing by right and according to the law, i.e. the people hold the sovereign power. Okay? Then there's de facto government. That's what's going on now with the United States. The de facto. And that is feudal law. is an illegitimate and not formally nor legally recognized government that is in effect. Now, from 1776 to 1871, the United States of America was functioning under de jure Republican form of government. And after the coup of 1861, federal law was introduced into the Republican form of government, and the de facto form of government began. Okay? The de facto form of government was the creation of birth certificates, the transfer of human labor from the corporate families, like the plantation owners and things of that sort, to the corporate states, like the state of Delaware, the state of Pennsylvania, the state of New York. Okay? The de facto government then began to create a straw man for everyone and create artificial persons as well as colorable law, as statutes, codes, ordinances, policy, and the beginnings of this colorable people. That's why you have people calling themselves by crayon colors, whether it be white, black, red, yellow, brown. Alright? That's very important to understand that de jure is still in place. But because the European brothers and sisters have been compromised, they can't really get into that right now. They can't really speak like that right now. Okay? They can only really speak like, they can only tell the lie now. They're intimidated under threat, duress, coercion, and intimidation to tell the lie. Okay? So they're not even telling the truth right now. It's not de jure. They're not enforcing the de jure. We must enforce the de jure, the Moors, the Aboriginal ones, the indigenous ones, those who made it up, those who developed it, those who wrote these treaties. We enforce the de jure by just being ourselves and stepping out of that status of black, white, yellow, and green, and coming back to our Moors, Aboriginal status. Okay? That's the only way it can be fixed. Okay? Now, I know I ain't really getting to incorporate street war and all the other stuff that I want to get into, leans. I'm going to get into that next time, and that'll be part C. Alright, I see it's been about 30 minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and shut it off. But this is Malik Wali Bay once again, part 2. And just letting my brothers and sisters know, sharing all the information that I have from what I do and what I've studied.